Okay.
The button's been pushed. You're live.
Live.
Yeah, so you should have a little clock in the top left that says live.
I see that.
Yeah, that's good there.
Hello, internet.
Hello, exactly. Hello, world.
Good day, internet. How are you? Cool. So yeah, this is we pushed out to the different streams, so just got to wait for people to come
there
in.
He is.
Say hi. The one, the only. Jos is here.
Who is Jos?
Jos is.
Thanks for coming.
Well, hang on, Jos. You can introduce yourself to Matt and Brett.
Yeah, before we kick the show off properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jos is always here. Jos lives in the Netherlands.
Okay.
And we've met him.
He's officially our number one fan.
Yeah.
Cool.
We've met him at
He's why we do this, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. This is really between you and Jos. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
We're just bystanders.
Yeah, we asked him who would he like to have on as a guest.
And he said anybody apart from Matt and Brett.
Seems amazing. This inscrutable emoji has popped up. I have no idea what that means. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm too old to know what emoji means.
So that, I believe, is Twitch's generic standard happy face.
It doesn't look particularly happy.
No.
Meanwhile, Ken's in. He's saying, "I'm not a number fan. I'm crying now."
No, Ken, when you get back with the solo play feedback, you'll kind of climb up higher towards being our number one fan. But until then, it's still Jos.
Is there a lot of competition?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep. So I've got a whiteboard. So the next Wednesday's hangout will be in like my new sort of like setup. So I'm gonna keep like a running sort of league of number one fans. Just sort of like change it live.
Is it like how they used to do it in what was the racing show, like Top Gear? You know, it's like the top times. You have the magnetic stickers.
Yeah, except it's not just like one go. Like you don't just get like one drive around, like one hot lap. It's like it's constant up and down.
Is it more impressive if you're number one fan in the wet?
Yeah, well, it's like Anita would have. So my partner, when we were talking about the children, she'd be like, "You're my favorite child today."
Yeah, that's rough.
So and it's like they have to vie for the number one position. Which is great, but it's great that it's mutable. Like. Rather than the being like, well, you're just my favorite.
It's not just one of them all the time. That would be terrible, I suppose. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
mixes around. It's all good. All right, I'm going to hit the countdown button. We're going to kick this extravaganza off in a moment.
I didn't know there were so many buttons.
This like the role of producer presenter is not to be sniffed at.
He's got like cranks and wheels just out of view there.
There'll be some like steam coming out from the side.
Yeah, he's like winding around.
Wow.
It's the only way I can keep standing. It's just like through all of the pulleys and systems. All right. Okay, everybody. If you're here for the start of the show, you know that it's countdown time. I made a new one. Get excited.
Oh, wow.
Ta-da!
Hey. And he's
A branded countdown.
Doodle-doo.
I was this far away from ripping off the countdown music and just going, okay, I'll just do a 30-second one because
I wish I'd known that was coming because I would have had a cardboard to cut out ready and then I could have just swapped it in.
It's just like this is the Queen. Anyway, it is Wednesday, looking at my calendar, 23rd of September, 7 o'clock in the UK, 8 o'clock if you're in the Czech Republic or Czechia. I don't know.
Indeed. Czech Republic, I think. Let's keep the Czech Republic.
Let's keep the Czech Republic. And, oh, God, lost all time now. 2 o'clock on the East Coast of America, but none of us are there today. It's time for another Hub Games Hangout with us, your illustrious, beautiful hosts. I'm Michael. There's Rory. Hello, Rory.
Rory. Hello.
Oh, apparently the tune was a little loud. And we have guests, special guests. I'll turn it down for the next time. Matt Dunstan, hello.
Hello, everybody.
And,
thanks for having me.
And your I was going to say your elaborate co-pilot.
I think that's very generous
Actually-
as an adjective. I think it'll only get worse.
I think that's actually pretty accurate as well.
It's not elaborate. It's quite a generous noun for that matter. I don't think.
The alliterative and wonderful Brett. Hello.
Was I introduced there? I couldn't tell.
I called you alliterative and wonderful.
Okay, as long
Not
as
entirely sure what that means. But
No, I'm not either, so I'll just take it and assume it's good.
take it as a compliment. It's all good.
Sure.
as he reaches for his dictionary.
That's it.
Oh, I know what the words mean. I just don't
That's
know.
it. Unable to read. Cool. All right. So yeah, we are good to go. Welcome, folks who are joining us live for the Hangout. Joe, lovely to have you on board. Joe. No thumbs up on Twitch, apparently, according to Jos. We'll have words and we'll have him fix it. Ken as well. Hello, Ken. Ken gets extra points. So yeah, Ken bought me a copy of Hades in the week because he's a foolish person. So he gets 9 million points.
I think I had competition.
At the moment. Yeah, number one fan. We'll have a league up and running next week, I guarantee you. So yeah, as always, we're going to kick off with what have you been playing, if you have been playing anything. Because it's a little bit difficult
We'll start with Matt.
Matt, you're in Czech Republic at the minute.
I am. Well, I'm quite lucky actually because my partner is very happy to play games with me. So we managed to play one or two things a day even. So played a lot of Grand Austria Hotel recently. Got very addicted to that. Finally finished our King's Dilemma campaign, not just me and my fiance, but a few weeks ago. It was like 19 games or something ridiculous. What else? And just a lot of prototypes, I guess. Yeah, but it's a good mix of things. That's part of lockdown was I purchased a lot of games, and we've been slowly making our way through it. I don't normally get. Well, yeah, but normally when I had to go to work and things, I'd only have time to play prototypes. But this seemed like, thankfully, a nice time to be able to play some games that I've always wanted to.
Cool.
Is good. Brett, what about you? Anything?
I mean, I haven't played
hit your table.
a couple of prototypes. I mean, and since the theme is in theory collaboration, although we haven't got onto that, I don't know whether we'll get there yet.
No.
I mean, it's a sad story, so we shouldn't get
Last Thursday was the first time that Trevor Benjamin, one of the other designers from Cambridge, and I actually got together face to face in the same room for for 6 months. And actually sat down and played a couple of prototypes together.
And then we just cried, and then because we were so happy. And then we went home.
Given how it's going, I'm wondering whether it's going to last much longer. We've been waiting to get together for more, but who knows? Maybe we'll be banned again. We won't be able to stay in the same room for very much longer.
Hey, we'll find out tomorrow, I guess, when yet another government announcement comes up that's getting more and more horrifically like these stay indoors Mitchell and Webb sketches. Remain indoors. Rory, what about you? Anything thrilling, exciting?
I have been playing Marvel Champions: Rise of the Red Skull, and beat the first scenario in that. Nice. After losing it, so lost 1-1-1. I've been giving Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion a try, playing solo two-handed. And kind of waiting to see what the cool thing is about the game.
Have you played the regular Gloomhaven?
No.
I have.
No. I've played it twice or something.
So, because in contrast, and it's quite a different game, but this arrived from Kickstarter, which I had backed ages ago. And it's basically a book to go with Myth. So Ulysses Spiegel have taken it over from MegaCon. That's beautiful artwork. So it's kind of like a
beautiful artwork. Opens it up. 2 pages of text.
Full of text.
Wonderful typography also.
Oh, it's I do appreciate good layout. And yeah, that kind of came in, and Myth has a kind of hand management aspect to it, which is really flavorful, I think, in the game. And so I'm kind of, so far, I'm on the second scenario. It's introducing bits as you go along. But I'm kind of going when's the thing? Like, what's the thing, the mechanic or the thing that makes Gloomhaven so cool? Because
you haven't uncovered it yet.
No, I haven't.
Well, there's always hope.
Yeah. What was it? My dad always used to say, there's two hope in this world, Bob Hope and no hope.
No hope, yeah.
And it's just sort of like dad jokes before they were dad jokes. I, meanwhile, have played only our own stuff because I won super well at the weekend, so they're kind of sucky. Me and Rory, we got together on the Let's Play Friday stream, and I had my butt handed to me again on Prism Arena. Thank you, Rory. Cheers. Maybe you'll go easy on me one time.
I went easy on you that time, Michael.
You did go easy on me that time. I was super bad at it.
Sorry.
And then Monday, I tried out the Adventure Mart solo on the Let's Play Monday stream, which was cool, going up against the Vendatron. And again, I was not victorious, which is probably a bit of a spoiler for Yoss, who was watching it on the YouTube repeats.
Can you put Ken's comment up?
Corporate shill. What do you expect? It's called the freaking Hub Games Hangout, Ken. What do you expect?
Yeah, but I mean, you're only 5 minutes in, and that's like it wasn't like between under the radar. You just like went straight.
No, like we get it out of the way up front, and then
yeah, because then we can like talk about everything else. I have been playing. Well, it's less playing; it's more being a part of the cultural phenomenon that is baseball. So that took up a chunk of my time over the weekend of voting for weird things in this weird fake baseball game that we're all just trying to mold in our own image. So that was good.
I think you just said too many words that didn't make sense.
All right, it is a fake virtual baseball league that is entirely driven by a group called the Games Gang, I believe is their name. But the lore and the story and everything around it is entirely driven by the community, and it's sort of like it's like a collaborative giant storytelling experience. If you took standard regular baseball and then mixed it with the very, very, very weird world of 100,000 people's brains. And I mean, okay, there was a pitcher called Jalen Hot Dog Fingers. She got murdered. She got like incinerated by an umpire, and then a sacrifice happened as she came back from the depths. That's one of the 9.5 million things that happened. It doesn't make a lot of sense when you just talk about it. You have to play it.
You could have said that at the beginning. You could have just cut the whole thing. Yeah, understood.
That is true. That is true. Oi, you're a guest here. I can kick you out if I need to.
I could leave if I want to.
Actually, you could.
No, you can't. Actually, if you try to leave, you'll find.
Well, like you won't turn off.
The Hub Games Hangout is like the Hotel California of internet broadcasting. You can check out any time, but you may never leave.
Wow.
And with that poignant,
ominous tone,
let's go into our conversation topic of the week. We are going to talk about collaborative design. We often see sort of like, you see a game on a shelf. Hopefully the company who's published it have put the designer's name on it. And a lot of the time, you might see the names Matt Dunstan and Brett Gilbert on them, but not alone, often together, because inexplicably, you two have managed to make a whole load of games with each other without killing each other.
I mean, these days, the only way you'll find us together is on a box, though, not in real life.
The relationship broke down so much, Matt fled for the mainland of Europe.
We live in another country now, so, what can I do?
It is better now.
Yeah.
And, of course, Rory and I...
Look behind you, Brett, because tonight...
Well, behind this door, right here. Right.
So it just opens it up and it's just Matt hiding in there going like waving him back. Matt, Rory and I have also collaborated. Obviously we did Holding On Trouble Like Billy Kerr together as well. And we figured it would be a nice topic because most game designs, it seems, do have like a singular designer on the front of it. And then the rest of the work is done by like in-house developers or whatever. But if you're putting together a game as a pair or as a group, obviously the dynamic behind it is going to be a lot different. So, I mean, I guess the first thing to ask is, how did you two get to first know each other? And where did sort of like the leap from people just hanging out with each other to let's make a game go? Let's go, Matt. You can kick off with the
director.
We both know the story, although Brett will correct me, I guess. No, it started when
I'm old.
Yes, shut up, Dad. Go. You know.
Why, you little
you young whippersnapper?
That's a different part of the story, but anyway.
Yeah. So I moved to Cambridge in the UK in 2011 to do my PhD. I'm Australian, in case it doesn't come out in my voice. And I stalked Brett via the interwebs when he hadn't scoured all presents away as he's done now.
Yeah.
And I found his blog, and actually, is the blog still there, Brett, in any shape or form?
Everything is expunged. I don't exist. I'm like a ghost.
It's a real shame, because it was a really, really good blog. At that time, 10 years ago, there weren't a lot of game design blogs or even designers really talking about the process of design. And Brett had a really excellent series of articles, really, I think, taking deep dives into different mechanisms, not necessarily on specific games, different types of players. And so I found this website, and I don't know why, I just decided to reach out to Brett, and I must have known you were British, and I thought, well, who knows? And it just turned out that Brett was in Cambridge as well, where I was moving to. So we started meeting once a week in a pub, and Brett, I think we both probably were already designing at that time. So we had some things that we'd sort of bring along and try with each other. And I think over time, for me, I was a little less experienced. And I think it was just natural for me to sort of think about working with somebody else to learn more about how to design and to make better games, or make different games than the type of games I was making at the time. In my other job, I'm a scientist, and that's a really normal thing to do. If you've got a problem, you go to someone else and say, can we work on it together? You have a speciality, I have a speciality. Why not we, join forces? So maybe I subconsciously applied that to game design, and the rest is kind of history. I guess that group is now, we started essentially a playtesting group that's now been running for 10 years, basically.
Cool. So Brett, you're sort of like in Cambridge, working away, doing your thing, and then an email drops into your inbox, and it's like, "Hello, I'm an Australian person. Good day to you." I'm assuming that's exactly what the text read. So what's your side of the story?
Well, it is quite a long time ago, but I mean, I think it just was a very opportune moment, because I think that was it happened around the first time I went to Essen, and I'd just met Rob Harris and John Yarney kind of slightly by accident. And they were going to Essen, and they asked me, they kind of invited me to go to Essen with them. I was like, wow, okay, I'll do that then. And I think that was around the same time.
That was the first time we actually met in person, was it?
Yeah,
Essen,
I think
2011.
We met at Essen, and that was when it was all new, and I'd never done any of it before. And I'd not, the idea of designing a game and actually pitching it to a company was alien. But it was the next year. It was only took a year when we started meeting and working together. We went to Essen as designers. I'd had one game published, essentially, Divinare from Asmodee, which that's has its own story, but that was a bit of a fluke anyway. And we had a game, and we reached out to people in the UK, designers we knew who had contacts with publishers. We set up some meetings. We turned up and just figured it out as we went along. It was kind of crazy. I think we had like 13 or 14 meetings that first year, but we only had one game. We got really good at explaining it as well.
So what was that first game?
It was a game called Venice, I think, which isn't exactly the most original of titles. And it was I don't know quite, how do you describe it, Matt? Because it was a
light sort of family strategy style game. You had a map of Venice. You had a person on the land and a person in a gondola, and you could move them independently around the city. And you were, delivering some goods here and there, standard Euro fare. But it had a really nice sort of evolving. You had a little small tableau which would contain both the goods you could trade and the actions, sort of little bonuses you had. And as you traded things, you'd give away bonuses, and so it had some nice little twists and 45 minutes sort of game. But it's never seen the light of day. Although
birth to a different game, which hopefully will see the light of day, which may yet be called Venice, or close to that. But it's taken a long time to get there. But yeah, that was just, I suppose it was a really positive and productive experience. And from that, out of our meeting and our decision to playtest each other's games and work together, we slightly grew the meetup that we'd started in Cambridge, because I knew that the people, the two guys behind War on Terror, are based in Cambridge. So Andrew Sheeran and Tom Morgan-Jones, the illustrator.
Those were Terrible
Game,
yeah.
Exactly. And I reached out to them over the interwebs, and they started coming to our little gathering. So there were like 4 of us, and we'd have our little kind of Euro game stuff, and Andrew would turn up with some kind of bonkers political tirade in the form of a game. And but at the same time, we were going to the meetups in the Playtest UK meetups in London, still just like once a month. And it just all kind of happened at the same time within the space of like 2 or 3 years, really.
Just like a nice fortuitous selection of events coming together.
I think it felt like that at the time anyway, because I'd never even thought about going to Essen before I met Rob and got invited to go. And none of it was made possible for me. I wouldn't have done it on my own. Like, it's all collaboration, isn't it? If somebody else comes along and says, oh, hey, why don't we do this? It's like, oh, maybe we could do that then, because on your own, it's really hard.
So I guess it's less daunting with somebody, by your side, I guess.
It's massively less. Yeah, I mean, we've had hundreds of meetings. We've been to Essen, 9 years, whatever it is. We've had hundreds of meetings, and to do that on your own would have been absolutely exhausting and incredibly demoralizing as well, because you have lots of meetings, and then you spend a lot of time. You turn up with your thing that one or other or both of you have made, and you put it on the table, and they just sort of shake their head and sort of usher you away. And it's, if you were on your own and you couldn't storm out and turn to your compatriot and go, what a bastard, then it would be actually really hard work.
Well, you at least have a friend. I mean, those sort of experiences, if you're a designer, and maybe it's similar when you're on a booth, you're your own schedule. If you're by yourself, you wouldn't have any time to catch up with anybody. You wouldn't have any friends. At least you have one other person there with you throughout it all. So
that's true. I have a list of questions to ask over the course of the
prepared,
conversation.
Rory.
Rory writes questions. I just freestyle.
Well, no, see, I would tend to go, like, my natural inclination would be to, like, I'll make it up as I go along. And then I go, no, I should actually have, like, 1 or 2 questions at least prepared. So I'm kind of curious, in terms of, like, collaborating, like, what is it that you both think you bring to the relationship and you think the other person brings as well? I'll start with Matt. Well, because Brett's just been talking, so I think
this is where you need us to both write down what we think the other person does.
Yeah, like the old
and put it up.
Yeah, newlyweds game.
Yeah. So I'm gonna mute one of you.
I think I bring. I have a lot of ideas. I probably keep up with the industry a bit more than Brett does, or at least the more hobby side of the industry. So I probably see more games. I'm always catching up with news, and so I think a lot of that seeps through into thinking about new ideas or iterations on existing mechanisms or things like that. So usually I'm bringing a lot of new thoughts to the table, and I'm reasonably good at coalescing those into a physical playable prototype, even if it's terrible and looks extremely bare bones. I'm fairly efficient at doing that. So I think I'm quite good at getting across that first hump of getting it out of your head and sort of onto the table. And to be honest, I think a lot of the games we design together, they don't start as obviously no game could actually, we're not symbiotically linked or something. You don't have the same thought at the same time. So it starts with that one, but a lot of the times I'm bringing things to Brett. We just had a call a week ago, for example, where I'll go through my notebook and I'll just list eight things as like, any of those interest you, Brad? Thankfully, one did, but not always.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I can't do that. I don't have that brain to do that. And it's not true that every single one of our collaborations has grown from a seed of Matthews, but it's definitely most of them. And I think that's why I'm like, it works as a team. And this is kind of something that we've talked about before, I think, is that I'm much more of a developer and an editor. And that, and you have to have an opinion, don't you? And if Matt puts 8 ideas on the table and I go, well, I like that one, then we're off to the races. We've got something to work on. And it will immediately start changing. We could have a conversation for 20 minutes, and then the very next time there's a prototype, it will have shifted in a direction which was a response to that, and we can start moving. But I think there's that first step of getting out of your head and onto the table is super hard, and that's where a lot of people struggle. So just to do that, that's like, it's like 80% of it, but there's the rest of the 20% is a lot of work potentially, or maybe not very much work, and it's actually 5 or 10 minutes of conversation. You can get something that's 95% there almost immediately. But I think that's something you can learn. We can both bring your skills to that. So I think we are complementary for sure.
So do you want to say a bit more like about that aspect you bring as the kind of editor and developer?
I mean, part of it is that I think we have, like, I'm a very visual thinker. And so I make pictures of things, and as soon as Matt describes an idea, then I can build a picture in my head, and that helps me think about it. But he's busy thinking about it in a different way, and those can both. Hopefully, it's this, isn't it? Hopefully, somebody says, "Well, one of us says, okay, it's not that, but maybe it's this," and the other one goes, "Well, yes, but it could be this or this or this," and so it goes back and forwards. And I think having different approaches is what allows that to happen. If 2 people are in that relationship and they both had very similar ways of thinking about it, or very similar focuses, then it probably wouldn't or couldn't be as productive, I think. I don't know. I haven't spoken to that many partnerships, so it's hard to know.
Well, I mean, I was actually just thinking as you were describing, like, the thing you bring to the table, I was realizing I've worked with both of you on different things. Like, so Brett, you were helping with the rules for Prism Arena, and what you're describing is why I had asked you to help with that. Is just for me, like, you're a questioner. You want to know, well, why is something the way it is?
Yeah, I'm always doing that. Really pisses people off.
Yeah, some would say it's cantankerous, but
it's not
cantankerous, but positive.
I hope it's not angry or rude. Hopefully, it's constructive.
There have been some new designers who've come along to the Cambridge meetup, never to return after Brett plays their prototype and gives his opinion.
But I think I deliver my opinion in a relatively gentle way, or maybe clearly not. Maybe that's untrue. But I certainly have. But the longer I've gone on, the more opinionated I've become. But
you have less patience, certainly.
Yeah, and that's probably true also. But that's just because you know more about what it is that you think you know. If you see what I mean. Like, you developed your view of the world or games or whatever it might be. And it's like, well, no, you're wrong. Well, not you're wrong, but it's just not what I would do. But that's the problem. When you present it to other designers, all they do, and I'm the same, is they tell you the game they would make, not the game you should make. That's all they can do. How could they give you any other opinion? And if you can't take that, then it probably is a bit hard work. But hopefully it can be constructive too. Not everybody has run away screaming.
Well, that's good. I can just picture Matt running after them to go, it's okay. He's like this with everyone.
Well, Matt's fairly opinionated too. I don't think that's a bad thing, is it? I mean, you'd have to be, wouldn't you?
No, I think that's also an aspect of designing that you get. With experience, it's receiving feedback, and I think certainly at the start of that process, it can be, it's just another thing you have to get used to. And if you don't have a thick skin or know how to take on that information, then you might react differently. So I think it really depends on the personality of the person and what they're trying to do.
Ken's had an interesting point, which is Matt is the programmer, Brett is the QA. It's like, I can see that.
Well, I know. I have to say, there's more.
I mean, that's if you boil it all the way down. Yeah. That's very true. I'd like to sort of like build on what you both were saying there. So Matt, if you like step up and you've got the notepad full of ideas, and then Brett, you sort of like go, okay, so I really like that one, and then you start visualizing it. Matt, you obviously have like a sort of like semi-vision of it in your head as well. How often do those sort of visions meet up, and how often do those visions completely diverge? And if they do diverge, what steps do you take to sort of bring things back together again?
That's a good question. I think, to be honest, if our thoughts on a game are diverging so rapidly, either that will become two games and we won't try and reconcile it, or we just won't keep working together on that idea. I think we're in the fortunate position that we have no shortage of projects that we could work on, and I think life's too short. Like at the very start, if you can't share some excitement, it might be an excitement for some different part of the game, but if you can't share some excitement for an eventual vision or eventual game, then trying to force it, I think, is a bit too much. Or maybe Brett is just too cantankerous to be able to reason with. But I think. Yeah, I think you just choose your battles, and why it's life's too short to just. So yeah, if I have an idea and Brett, yeah, it sometimes does happen. Then when I'll make the first prototype and we'll play it, and I think Brett might sort of go, that was really different in my head, or I didn't think that was going to play like that, or sometimes it just doesn't catch somehow, and then I think those games, they'll either sort of die at that point, or I'll take them off and work on them myself or something, or if I really believe that somehow something's been missed, then we work from there. But I don't think it's about trying to force two different opinions into one. I think it's trying to find some common ground, even if it's a very, very small slice of common ground, even if it's one small part of the original game that you can both sort of latch onto and be excited about, or agree is a cool part or a fun part of the game.
But I mean, sometimes what happens is there'll be a prototype and it'll be on the table, and we're both kind of disenchanted with it. Like, it's not what Matt hoped it would be when he made it, and it's not what I thought it was going to be when he described it to me. And then maybe it takes a week or a few days, or we both independently think about it, and one of us will go, "Oh, but it could be this instead." Like it's there's still a trajectory from that original prototype to something new, but it could be radically different. Like, it could literally be the opposite thing. It's like, well, what if you just flip it around and turn it into this? Can it still access the thing that you were trying to look for when you first came up with the idea? And if it can, then it can flow forward, I guess. But there's no magic bullet. I mean, sometimes it's just neither of us particularly interested when it just fiddles. But it's never really wasted, is it? Because all that stuff goes on, and it's got to get put away, and sometimes it comes out again years later.
But there's I'm kind of hearing something interesting, and I'm trying to get my head around it, because you can have ideas that you kind of might disagree on, but there always seems to be this kind of drive to try and find something like a common ground to work on. And I'm guessing what's the itch that's scratched for you both by working together?
Well, I mean, Brett could. Oh yeah, sorry, you looked like you're
I think we have different attitude, and the whole editor developer thing. It's like, part of that is, well, okay, there's a sort of a solution, or there's a kind of a question there, and how could you change the question to find a more interesting solution? Like, there's always a game in any idea, and it's not that we've either necessarily challenged ourselves to find it, but sometimes you think, oh, that could be really good, and maybe it's not quite what Matt was thinking, or I'm not, we're not on the same page, but one or other of us, or both of us, see something in it which kind of begins to grab us, I guess, and there is a hook there that we can work on, and but it still might not come to anything. But it's partly about trying to find some kind of order or sense in it. Like, there is a compulsion, I think. And we're both scientists. It's all about patterns and maps, isn't it? It's like, how do you build a version of the world that makes sense? And if there's an idea there and it doesn't quite make sense, then that can gnaw away at you a little bit.
And I think fundamentally we both still just want to make new games, even outside of sort of commercial. I mean, I'm not going to say as an art saying, but I think both of us are driven by some sort of intellectual curiosity, with a new idea. What could it be? What could that end product be? And I think that is for me, that's what keeps coming back. It's that kind of curiosity, excitement as to, and with a certain amount of experience, the point where you start at can be so radically different from the end of the movie or end of the journey. You kind of want to know what that end is. It's like a good book. You want to know what the twist was. You want to know what the conclusion was. So I think we're both driven to get to that conclusion and to see what the most exciting conclusion is, and to keep searching for it.
Yeah, sometimes you find something you didn't realize was there, and that can be sometimes quite exciting. It's like, all this while there was this idea like hiding under the surface of it, and we've revealed it, and that can be exciting. Even if nobody else likes the idea, at least there's that.
At least there's two of you who do.
No, but it does kind of speak to the soul slightly, isn't it? It's like, oh wow, we found something that was kind of hiding in plain sight, and we could have missed it. So how exciting to discover it.
It's like the magic was inside you all along.
Like that, but less saccharine.
But with maths and science and stuff. What was the first sort of like published collaboration between the two of you, and how did it feel sort of like going through that process together? I mean, obviously, like Brett, you had Divinare as like your solo. Like your solo debut. Matt, I think your first proper debut was Rival. Was Relic Runners?
Yeah. Yep.
Which is where we met, of course. That's because I came and did a big interview with you, which was really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know. Yeah, I didn't interview you though, Brett, because
I was waiting for him to go.
Well, it wasn't my game, was it?
No. But yeah, so what was the first one that sort of like, you were both on the box cover, and yeah, like I said, how was that sort of like journey?
Well, is it Elysium?
I think that's the first that was released. I had this feeling that it wasn't the first signed, but I think it probably was the first released.
Which is kind of crazy thing that was the first one, because it was such a huge release, and it garnered such a lot of attention. But that had an enormously long journey towards its end, crazily long journey. So that's kind of it was a really aberrant case in a way, and so it's hard to describe where it started because it didn't start anywhere near where it ended.
Was it like completely different theme, or was it like, Matt, you had like this idea of like, it's got to be about the gods, and I want these weird columns?
Well, no, because we wrote it up, but there's a quite a long designer diary on BGG somewhere if anybody's super interested. And we wrote up, and it went through like 9 completely different versions, and the only thing there was a thread that carried all of those different games, which were quite radically different, were these set of dice we made for the first version, which was this big sort of sprawling adventure kind of thing, which didn't work. I mean, maybe there was something there, but we didn't make it work. And so these dice carried us all the way through, and we almost gave up. Several times, I think, we almost gave up. So one of us or the other said, no, maybe there's still something waiting to be discovered. And Space Cowboys were very excited about it, and actually they signed it quite quickly, I think. But they're French, so they're like, well, let's go on with it. They're not Germans. They're not going to take 9 months to decide whether or not they like it, and then think for another 9 months whether they want to publish it. But the one thing they did was get rid of the dice. So
really?
They killed the one thing. That was they were really sheepish about telling us. We had a very diplomatic email from them saying, we still love your game. They'd already signed it at that point. They've been working on it for some time. Yeah, we've decided to, I hope you're all right if we just get rid of the dice. So sure, fine. But it was it's a good end to the story, because that was the one thing that had carried it through.
It had served its purpose.
It had served it, exactly. Yeah.
I guess, it got you where it needed to go.
Yeah, and kill your darlings. And we'd never even thought about getting rid of the dice. It never occurred to either of us, because of course, by definition, that's what the game was. That was its foundation.
That being said, they didn't. So I was just going to say, that being said, the dice became the columns. They sort of just lost half of their meaning, so they were still present. But,
that's true. The mechanism they represented, but the randomness was removed, and it was the right call, because I'm sure lots of gamers would have been very upset that the game could have been that random, or they'd have had to deal with that randomness or mitigate it, etc.
But
that had a really interesting and very long journey. which could easily have just fizzled into nothing several times, I think.
Left on the side of a hill like a Spartan child.
A bit like that, I imagine.
Yeah.
So I'm curious then, like, and I know it's different for every single game and every single title, but I'm trying to think of people watching, like, can you give an example of the journey that a game would, like, if you pick a game and kind of describe the journey of it going from initial conversation through to it being picked up or not by a publisher?
Yeah, does it like bounce back and forth between you two like a tennis ball, or are there times when you come together and there's like, we're going to work on this very specifically, and then diverge, and then come back and diverge?
And they answer yes. Next.
No, it's not like that. I don't think we don't work on games independently. Either there'll be a version of the game or there won't, and if there is, we can both potentially playtest it, or of course in usual times playtest it together. Mm-hmm. But it's not as if I go off and build my own prototype and Matt goes off and builds a different one, and we come back and go, what the hell are you doing? It's not that. It's all of those decisions are collaborative and they're made simultaneously. But I don't know, Matt, have you thought of a good example? You're staring at your shelf.
Yeah, I am staring at my shelf. Maybe, like Professor Evil or the Citadel of Time, reasonably recent game, cooperative game from Funforge. We started really, I think actually the origins of that was something almost trying to make a Cluedo-like cooperative game somehow. And we started with this house. And in this case, actually, the initial idea didn't deviate so much from the final form. Obviously, a lot of details changed, but the kind of the scope of the game was sort of there from the start. I made the first few prototypes again with very, very basic graphics. I mean, graphics is already a generous term. Yes, a stretch. It's like
words
like
and lines.
boxes. Well, yeah, exactly. It was pretty much that, and we would meet and play it together usually. And I think there's usually a point in most of the games we work on that, especially. I mean, in any game, it's obviously started in one person's head, and I think there's a point where the other person latches onto that idea and can start not only understanding it, but adding things to it in a meaningful way, because they can start to interrogate that and really understand the problems or what needs to be changed. And I think there was a point where Brett sort of came on board and sort of rethought, for example, what was the point of the game, because originally I think there was a convoluted sense of getting points for picking up items around the house, and I think Brett certainly saw it. Okay, why is it just a simple kind of hide and seek almost, that you have to find these things before the professor hides them away. And I think also around that time we came up with this dice system that is a sort of a way to control the professor. So I think we were also interested in a cooperative game where the threat or the foe is real and present in the game. It's not some ominous thing like a pandemic or a flood that's outside your control. It's a real character. The pawn's there. You would often be swearing at him as he would as you would roll the dice, he'd do exactly what you didn't want him to do. And then there's a point where on a more practical level that Brett also takes over the prototype, I would say, because one of the other skills which we haven't talked about is that Brett has a really great experience in graphic design and in sort of copy editing and these different things. And so Brett's prototypes are not in the same league essentially. And there'll be a point where it's sort of real enough and it's sort of solid enough that Brett will sort of take what my scribbles that we've been using to that point and essentially redesign it. And in that redesign, Brett will also come with a bunch of questions. It's sort of like, well, this happened, I see the board works like this, but couldn't the logic of how the rooms are connected up, couldn't it work like this? Or I've thought, there are 20 cards and there are only 5 reds and 3 blues. Why is that? Shouldn't there be 4 reds and 4 blues? Or, it's all that interrogation and just checking. And it's not just QA. It's not just saying there's 4 reds and 5 reds, there should be 4 and 4. No, it'll come with suggestions, or why can't it be like this? Or
Sorry, it made me think of something that I think it's important to kind of recognize that different people are like, they respond to different inputs, I think, and they get you thinking in different ways. Because as you were talking about, like Brett working on the board, I realized that it's why I often lay stuff out as well, because in the process of laying it out, I'm kind of thinking about the player and how they're going to interact with that thing, and it gives me an idea for how to improve the gameplay experience. Whereas if I kept it in the abstract, I wouldn't have that insight. For me, it's the tactile thing is what allows me to see those opportunities, maybe in a way where, Michael, I think you can see the game. I picture like the numbers spinning around your head as you're thinking about it, whereas I need to have something tangible.
Yeah, we've described it as like you need to have the physical there, and I'm just sort of like sat there on the ship in the Matrix, just sort of like I see the numbers, and it's like, okay, yeah, this will work.
I don't believe you.
I have a brain that does that. I can't do numbers. I'm terrible with economies and stuff. I can never figure it out. But at least when it's on a piece of paper and I'm drawing it out, or I'm writing the rules, I do quite like writing rules. But I use them as a tool. It's part of the design process. It isn't something you only do at the end, because I often come up against things which I don't understand. And if you can't write them simply enough, then they shouldn't be in the game, is my opinion. And that's the only way you're going to discover that, is if you actually try to write them down in a way that you think makes sense. And so I'm always a bit bewildered by people who only write the rules at the end. It's like, well, how do you know it's going to make any kind of sense on the paper if you haven't gone through that? But for me, that's part of the process. And I always write rules really early. Like, I can't enjoy writing them, but it's part of the process of understanding what a game actually is, and what it could be potentially, and also drawing pictures. So I'm not a professional graphic designer, but I can make things look. I can go like 80% of the way there, and it's kind of interesting. Not in either of the cases I think that we've been talking about, but for some projects and for some companies, it's kind of scary how close to, or how very much small, it was a tiny step they've taken away from the prototype that I made, or the kind of graphic design choices I came up with. How little they've really had to go very away from that. And I'm not sure they're being lazy. Well, maybe they are being lazy. I don't know. But I think it helps to show them. I think in terms of pitching it, it's the myth of a beautiful prototype, but actually I think it needs to be clear. It needs to be coherent and intelligible. And graphic design is part of that. And if you can do that for them, it's just easier for them to say yes.
Mm-hmm. It was, I think, a great thing I had learned. We used to give a talk called the Little Red Hen story, and it was the idea of, if you're trying to get people on board with something, if you just pitch them like the idea, the concept, the way their brains work, they don't visualize or picture that thing. So making it real for them helps to get them on board. So like by having a fairly well developed prototype helps them to see the potential, and especially if the physicality of the game is important,
right?
That's important to convey earlier on. But it does drive me crazy where sometimes I think people are like, oh yeah, that's grand. And I'm like, no, like I'm showing you like the, or you see it in games where you're like, yeah, that was kind of like the rough version of the game that they were shown, and they just went, yeah, that's good enough. Like, we'll just knock it out, because their brain doesn't think about the game visually. They think and play a game like mathematically or whatever it might be. Whereas like I would play the game visually. So the visual components are really important. But I think a lot of the people who are kind of making the choices in some of the publishers, their head is more in the gameplay math aspect of it, more so than the visual aesthetic experience of it.
I mean, obviously, Professor Evil's a really good example, because Funforge did such an amazing job with the production of it, and they really pushed it. They really interrogated it. They didn't just take what we gave them and made it pretty. They did ask really serious questions about the game and forced us to reevaluate quite a lot of the detail in it, actually, even though the form didn't change. So actually, that's what you want. You want a company who can do that, who can bring that to the table. For sure.
And more specifically, we got to work with a great developer, Doria Rostan, who really took on the game as her own, essentially. And it's always great to be able to work with people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you need a champion as well. That's for a product to really succeed like that, you need somebody in the company who is just as enthusiastic, or maybe even more enthusiastic than you are and can really see how to take it forward and make it work in their environment, rather than just kind of kick it out the door. It looks nice, doesn't it? It doesn't give it any kind of longevity, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I'm hogging the questions, Michael. So like you've talked about, you've kind of some design skill to bring to the table, Brett, but like what are some skills from your, because you both, Matt, I know you have a full-time job outside of game design. Brett, you work elsewhere? Are you full-time designer?
No, I think the short answer is no. I used to have a job, and I still do. I mean, I worked in publishing, so I had an editorial design position within publishing, and then I worked within a online retailer, which developed more of my kind of technical flash graphic. It was still very much for a purpose. It's not. It's not like I'm not an illustrator. I can't draw pictures. I can make information presentable, but that's a different skill.
Yeah.
And the skill in the editorial skill is really useful when writing rules. Yeah.
So I mean, that's what I was going to ask. Like, what skills from kind of outside or from other aspects of your life do you see are key that you bring into the collaborative process?
I mean, we are both physical scientists. There's a surprising number of physical scientists who are game designers. I mean, we're not just physical scientists. I mean, by training at least. I have a material science degree, and an actual material scientist who does actual material science. But it's kind of weird in a way because it's a very applied science. It's not. I think that's part of it. I mean, that's partly why I was attracted to it at university. I think it was practical. It had a practical side to it, at least in the way it was taught at the time, a very long time ago. But it wasn't entirely abstract. So there was a actual physicality to it, which maybe spanned like two parts of two different kind of disciplines. But in terms of actual skills that I use in game design, other than things I've learned professionally or had to do repeatedly, so I've got slightly better at them, such as graphic design or editorial stuff, the only stuff I actually use is like A-level maths, when I have to do some probability calculations and figure out how likely it is that 17 dice if rolled 7 times, whatever it might be. Like, at least I have access to how to do that, some understanding of that. But that's about the only bit of my actual formal education that I ever use.
What about you, Matt? What about from the outside world? What do you bring to the gaming table or the designing table?
I think a certain aspect of project management I'm reasonably good at. I think doing a PhD, for example, is a lot about project management, actually managing a lot of different experiments, different projects, different outcomes, and managing not just the work, but also time around that. And I think that's why I'm able to work on so many different projects at the same time and with a lot of different people and keep up with all the sort of the communication and documentation and all of that around it. I mean, Brett would agree, I'm probably the more organized in that in our collaboration. Like I'm the one who sort of keeps the records of meetings, and I'm the one who sets those things up for us and other parts. And I usually am the one trying to keep up with publishers and kind of keep, some sense of where the timeline for things are, and or to sort of check in with people. And so I think that is actually quite a useful skill, because I think not all designers have had to have that experience before, and it means it gives me the freedom and flexibility to work on and to keep switching from different things, even within 1 day or 2 days. If you want to be a full-time designer, you need to be able to work on different projects at different stages, and having some training in that is quite useful. The other part, I guess, is related to what we're talking about now, is collaboration. I think that, I was, and I should say in science, open collaboration is unfortunately not always a virtue that's instilled in everyone. I think it depends a lot on the people you work with, and especially your boss, the professor you work with. I was extremely lucky. I've had 2 professors I've worked with, both amazing people, and they were driven by science. They weren't driven by politics, or they weren't driven by power, or trying to command a fiefdom, which unfortunately you do get. And then this, again, not just in science, happens in lots of middle management, but what they instilled was this interest in the core activity, and we all should contribute to that. Nobody's too important or not important enough to contribute, to speak up, to share their ideas, to try and collaborate, to contribute. And I think I've taken that sense of openness and just why not to game design. So a lot of new collaborations start up because you're just talking with someone and you just say, well, why don't we just work on something together? There's not that sense of ownership or pride. I guess it's just let's share these things.
And actually, I think that's a really key point if you're talking about like what skills do you need to collaborate. It's that desire and openness to have your kind of views and opinions be challenged by someone else who you respect. I think that has to be a key part of it. And I kind of think of it in terms of, I'd always say in my relationship with Anita over the years, like we went to kind of design school together, and it was that mutual respect that I think is key to a healthy kind of working relationship, where if someone challenges you, you respect where they're coming from and are able to take it on board and know that the intent is to make it better, that you're both working on as well. Because I'd imagine there's people who have ideas and enjoy designing games, but they're not really interested in having their view questioned or challenged. They have the singular vision. Whereas I get the sense from you guys that there's a strength in both of you bringing your different skill sets to bear on a kind of shared idea.
Yeah, you have to give up ownership at some point. You have to accept that idea is going to become something actually outside of both of you in some way, and you're both contributing to it. And yeah, you definitely have to be open to. You're absolutely right. You have to be open to it, not only be judged, but kind of be rejected. That you think an idea is great, but then someone else says, "Oh no," But of course, the best thing is if you can respect that and you can take that on board, that's how things improve. It's a bit similar to a designer-developer relationship, not between Brett and I, but say between a designer and a publisher and developer, in that having that ability to actually welcome the input from someone else who will challenge you and will disagree with you. I have this fervent opinion that it will always make the game better. In fact, that's why I will never self-publish my games, because I think they would just be worse for doing that, essentially. So yeah, it's if you can be open, it's a great strength. It's a great things move quicker. You make better products more quickly, and that are actually approachable and fun to a wider range of people. Because at the very start, they were interesting to two different people with different interests and backgrounds.
And I think we both had that attitude even from the beginning. When we first started pitching to publishers, neither of us felt that we knew that once a publisher was interested or took it away from us, that it wasn't ours anymore. It wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. And I think lots of people struggle with that, like the idea of that somebody might take it away and change it, and then publish it, and then somehow it's not yours anymore. But that's the whole point. So I think, but neither of us struggled with that kind of aspect with the publisher relationship. I think we kind of both understood that from the outset, that was what it was going to have to be, what it needed to be to be successful.
Yeah, I think eventually you have to realize that the game is going to, the game once published as well, it doesn't just become, it's not just your game that then moves to the publisher's game, it becomes the player's game, so it's going to be going out to a bigger audience anyway, hopefully. So I think the earlier you realize that, it's okay to say, go off my child and make your success, the better it is. We actually have a question from Jos on the chat who says, is there a sweet spot in the amount of people to collaborate to make a game? Is working with 2 on a game better than 6?
How many 6 like large team of successful designers do you know? I don't think more than 2 is really practical myself. I'm not sure we've really tried it, but if there's 2 of you, you either agree or you don't. If there's 2 of you, it becomes a vote, and then it's like, well, how does that work?
I think there's a bunch of like Euro game
can work.
design groups, isn't there? Like,
I mean, there are, but maybe it would be interesting to know, wouldn't it? Be like, how do they work? Is it this kind of like mess of collaboration, or is it do they have roles within that? It's yeah. I mean, maybe I've just never tried, but I think it would be a lot harder to make progress early on, potentially, because there's just too many voices in the room, I guess. And how could you all have? You're going to have less and less ownership of it. I mean, you need some ownership of it, and you need to be able to give away that ownership, but it has to be something you can get your claws into that you feel that you're excited about, and that might get watered down if there were too many people.
So it's like having, I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's just like having you need enough of a stake in it, or like and literally an investment of yourself in it to then put the energy into to realize it. Whereas if that's diluted across multiple people, the risk is that when it's not going the way you would like to see it go, that you can kind of check out of the process.
That somebody has to, at any one point, one person within that collaborative team has to be pushing it forward, and it's not often both of you at the same time. More and more people there are. It's like, well, maybe he's doing it, maybe that guy's doing it, maybe the other guy's. What's his name? Yeah, whoever he is, he's probably on it. So I'll just sit here and I'll just wait. Was only two of you, and Matt is right. He is the project manager. Like, either he's doing it or he's asking me to do it. And so it's a binary thing, I suppose, isn't it? It's like it's either happening or it isn't. You either agree or you don't. And I think with more people, it could get really messy.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a bunch of like especially I think lighter party games or more mass market games. They will generally have a wider range of designers stroke developers, however they're credited on the box. So whether it's sort of like maybe two people working together or like
they just accept that as soon as they've all played one game, then it kind of belongs to all of them, and that's just a way of generating lots of ideas. And that's probably potentially quite a good way to work if you've got the right mix of people who can surrender their ego to it, readily enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. It's almost like writing comedy, like writing sitcoms. All of the great British sitcoms were generally written by one or two people, but like you think about the American sitcoms is always written about it's the writer's room. There's always like a whole bunch of people, and I'm sort of like comparing that with the folks at Funko Games. Like they're like a large group who when they sort of like it's never an individual name on the front of the box. It's a Funko Games product.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe their collaboration system is going to be very different to two people sitting across a table from each other or sitting in the same office or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. I think small is better personally.
Go on, sorry.
No, I'm done.
No, I was just going. That's another point, isn't it? Like you've got 3 or 4 people. How do you get them all together at the same time? You have to. It has to be for the collaboration to happen. There has to be a sense of commonality about it. I guess it's harder and harder to do it with more people. It's not impossible, but it must be harder for lots of reasons, both practical and kind of emotional.
Yeah, I don't know,
that's what I think. Anyway, I don't know.
I mean, I think it's entirely possible. I think the decision making is an important one in terms of you need to use consent rather than majority rules in that kind of scenario, because you don't want someone checking out of the kind of decision making process. But like when a game gets to us at a technically like a development level, but the two overlap. Like the different voices are really helpful to check the different aspects. So the way you would both have, I think, different gaming interests. For us and our team, we've people with very different gaming interests, and it's really helpful to get those different perspectives. But they usually get involved at a later stage. They're not there at the kind of early game mechanic side of things.
I think that's a key point. I think it's difficult. I think what we're talking about, or I think what Brett's also, especially when you have a product that you're developing, it has a stable base. You sort of know there are a few things that aren't going to change, probably, hopefully at that point, which I think it makes it that idea that product more resilient to lots of different input, because you sort of have a filter to put that through, because you know that this part of the game is always going to be that way. That's the point of the game, or whatever. I think early on in a design process, when you don't have that, and anything's up for grabs, the more voices you have then, and it's similar to when you playtest a very early design, and you have playtesters trying to redesign the game, and if you don't have anything to hold on to, lots of voices don't help you find that center. They just will keep tipping you out of equilibrium in different ways, or at least that's how I think about it. And I think larger teams, I think, is an interesting idea, but that starting point, that trying to find the core of a game, in some ways it's always personal, and it's just everyone's taking on the mantle of that design, solo over time, but it ends up a co-design, but only one person at a time is sort of pushing it forwards and remaking it.
Yeah. So I'm watching the clock as well. Is there a particular theme or topic? Because I'm trying to not say person, but is there a theme or a topic that you'd really love to collaborate with someone on, that you're like, I really want to do this, but I don't think I could do it on my own?
Well, I mean, there's a whole range of games that I very much enjoy playing, similar to what I said at the start. Grand Austria Hotel, all these sort of 60 to 90-minute strategic Euros. Steffenfeld was a big designer here of mine earlier. And I have tried a lot of times to design these style of games, but for whatever reason have never really happened across a way of getting there. So I think finding a way to work in that world, and we know I know lots who are friends who design these styles of games. I think that's still something that I would love to, in a very nebulous way, because it's not a really specific theme or a specific. It's just Bruno Cathala always says that he designs games that he loves to play, and I don't know if I can honestly say that about my games. Not that I don't enjoy them, but they're not born of, I wish this game existed. For me, it's a much more even a just intellectual pursuit of, can this game exist? Does it work? What's the problem? What's the puzzle? I would like to once make, somehow replicate, capture the lightning in the bottle that I love in what I'm playing, and somehow be able to make that. Maybe you can't do that, because the moment you work on something, it means something different to you. It can never hold that same place, but that's a small thing for me, I guess.
I can picture you like, Brett, just once, can I make a game that I want to play?
Well, I think Matt's not asking me to make games like that, because well, I do hate them. I'm kind of sick of Eurogames. And I'm particularly sick of Grand Austria Hotel. That was potentially the Eurogame that killed it.
You actually walked away mid-game. You refused to keep playing it.
Well, it was just a futile act. You were already 80 points ahead of me. It was almost the very last Eurogame that I decided to play, because I get why people like it. It's just everything about it was exactly the thing that I hate about Eurogames now, and that's fine. It's like, if I know that, I might as well not play them. What's the point? I mean, it's just a waste of everybody's time, isn't it?
I think it's just a trade of playing with Matt. I don't know if you remember when you played Innovation when we met up in London. And it was like that. I was really enjoying your company, but you're thrashing me in the game. It was just like,
I wasn't worried about losing. It was just, I could see that I could never win it. I didn't even understand how to do any better than terribly, and I wasn't enjoying it. It's supposed to be fun, isn't it? That's the point.
Well, I was having fun.
I was enjoying it, and he was busily, moving his cubes around and earning his points. And very happy in his little world sorting that problem. And I was like, well, you didn't really need me to be there. I was just taking up space in the room.
You just meat in the corner, just going,
yeah, but that's not the point. It was more that for me, it was just a completely banal experience, unfortunately. And what can I do? That's just how it is. So I could make a game like that is absurd.
So while Matt's off doing that, what would you love to be doing?
Gosh, I mean, I suppose I'm very practical. I like the physicality of games, or of the, which is a problem when you're stuck in a house, and all we can do is play virtually, because it puts me on Tabletop or Tabletop Simulator. All of that is lost, and to me, it's not irrelevant. It seems really important. So I don't know. I think you want something that's absolutely immediate and simple and clear and practical and fun and somehow really quick. And I don't know. I'm sure there are lots of good examples of incredibly lean, considered designs which are incredibly accessible to a vast number of people. And that's a product of them being very simple, having a really clear idea about them. So, and the problem is I'm not a great ideator, if that's a word. Like I really struggle to come up with ideas. Every now and again I'll have an inspiration, but it's hard to generate that, and that's what Matt's so good at. And so I struggle with that aspect of it, which is a shame. But I hope now that at least if I do have my great idea, whatever it might be, I know what to do with it. Like I think that's what we've learned, is a lot about the industry and the people in it and how things work and who you might approach. And if you have an idea, you know what to do with it. And I'm hoping that's like a pension plan.
There is one. Oh, sorry. There's just one thing where I can't believe that I had not answered this as the first point to your question, Rory. But actually, and because Michael's here, of course, the one theme or one licensed property that I would love to make a game for is Eurovision.
Oh yeah, God yeah.
And we keep.
Yeah.
That's not a trivia game, but
an actual good Eurovision game. Like it's totally doable.
He puts the euro in Eurovision. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. We have the vision.
That's the pitch. That's the elevator pitch.
Because every other Eurovision game has just been trashy trivia or just a bad rolling move, and we could do it.
But Eurovision as a concept isn't particularly high-minded, is it? Let's face it.
Excuse me. Where's the mute button?
Can't you just kick him out now?
But it's trash and gaudy nonsense, isn't it? So if you don't make a game that isn't that, what the hell are you doing?
Well, I think you could
work a placement game about voting systems, can you?
Demaka, but it's entirely about Eurovision.
Super niche.
It'll be played by exactly 9 people across the continent of Europe, and they will adore it.
Yeah.
Well, you got to find your audience somewhere, right? And they're there.
No, I think you could bring the camp and the gloss and the banging pop tunes and the 3 minutes of howling divas and the smoke machines and the so many see-through garments. But also, put a fun game system into that, and
get on with it. Come on.
Right, come, Matt. You and me afterwards. We'll get sorted. Real good.
Good.
So it's time to shill stuff because we're coming to the end of the show.
I thought you'd done it already. Sorry.
No, you two, you idiots. Yes. So what's coming up from you two that we can expect in the relatively near future? I mean, we've got Essen around the corner. You must have some new stuff for them.
There's quite a lot of stuff coming through for 2021, actually, which is kind of exciting. Nice.
Is there anything you can actually mention?
Well, there's a few there's sort of evidence of. There's a game from Floodgate Games in the States called Vivid, which we think is going to be on Kickstarter. Is that right, Matt?
I think it's going to be Kickstarter next month. I'm pretty sure.
But it looks beautiful. I mean, the cover. All we've seen is the cover.
It's Andrew Bosley of Tapestry and all this stuff.
And they've been doing a lot of development work on it, and fingers crossed it does well. Like it sounds like it should be amazing, and it looks so far that it will be.
I'm going to jump in because Michael, I was kind of looking at BGG in your list of games, and Vivid really caught my attention. And it reminds me of our early concept for Holding On. The idea of linking individual memories that were pictures together. But you've done it in a much more fun way than we were, planning to do it.
A game. I don't think I would claim that. And it'll be interesting to see exactly how they've rationalized it and kind of brought it to life. Because that was really very much a theme that they brought to something that was essentially abstract. But hopefully it will be a very beautiful, practical kind of physical game. But a kind of family plus, very straightforward, very easy to get kind of meat on the bones for gamers. So that's one game that's coming through. Should be good.
Matt, anything you're super excited coming up?
I just basically have a better memory than Brett because I think he can't remember.
Well, he's very old.
It's true.
Cheating. But yes, go on.
Well, Encama announced Nile Artifacts, so that's another sort of 30 to 40-minute family game in a sort of small box with a few little crunchy decisions, which also looks beautiful because Ankama makes incredibly looking games, so that's fantastic. There'll be a Kickstarter for so Alley Cat Games is going to kickstart a Dice theme park, but as part of that Kickstarter will be also for a Dice Hospital roll and write game, which Brett and I have designed, our first foray into the roll and write, which I'm glad that I finally got to make one because that's also another genre of game that I play a lot in playing normal games. So that's great. And Into the Box also announced Junk Forts, which is which ironically, it's sort of funny that the game has gone through actually several publishers and themes. It now has a theme that's not so far away from Leader Games Fort. Of kids in a junkyard making trash forts, but quite a different game. Although it's still a card game of building up a fort made of cards of different elements. So that's fun. And then hopefully there'll be more stuff next year. But as is everyone understands during this time, it's all a bit up in the air and plans are changing. So fingers crossed.
Cool. And of course, 2022 Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga, the board game from me and Matthew will be coming out. So we'll see how that goes.
That's not a real game. That's just a suggestion for what it should be. Cool.
Yeah.
No, have you seen it? It's the Netflix film, Brett.
Oh, it's the next. Okay, but I'm surprised that they haven't actually made a board game out of it yet. But so they're right.
They just haven't found the right person.
Talk about low-hanging fruit, crikey.
Oh, that'll be devastating. It's like that coming together. All right. It is time for us to go. Matt, Brett, thank you so much for your time. This has been a most enjoyable experience, chatting away about good stuff. If people want to find y'all, Matt, how can people find you?
Probably the easiest way is Twitter. I'm at wisegoldfish, all lowercase.
That is smooth.
Yeah, see? Not just thrown together. Meanwhile, I've done this one for you, Brett. There you go. You can just open a window and shout Brett.
Well, I mean, there aren't actually that many people in the world called Brett, so at least not in this country. So I mean, you might get lucky.
You do have a website, Brett, for example, that you could.
That's true. I have a website which is a sort of portfolio of all the games. Yeah, I mean, I'm not difficult to find online if somebody wants to reach out to me, but I just don't have.
I just won't reply.
Is it still 55 cards?
So
yes, it's 55 cards.
So there's and I respond. So if people email me or mail me via Board Game Geek, I do respond to people. I just, I'm not out there screaming at the rain constantly.
Old man screaming at Euro-sized clouds,
55cards.co.uk or .com?
.com.
.com. What do you mean, like this?
Oh, look at that! Brilliant. You see what a nice sort of short, concise URL I have.
Yeah, it's all.
Well, it's not really as great if you have to say it, Brett, though, that other people realize.
Or brettjgilbert.co.uk. That's also. I'm very easy to find, and the only other Brett Gilberts in the world are MDs from like Oklahoma. There's lots of doctors, American doctors. From Brett Gilbert. And there is one I think he's an American comedian called Brett Gilbert.
You should be like Highlander and take them down and claim their power. I'm going to do it with Michael J. Fox. It's going to happen one day.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not going to go well.
The world's slowest fight.
Well, no matter what happens, you're going to be on the losing end of the popularity vote there, Michael.
Yeah, the Austin. That's terrible.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for watching, folks at home as well. If you joined us live, an absolute pleasure. If you're joining us on the repeat over on YouTube or Twitch, that is a lovely thing as well. Me and Rory will be back on Friday for the Prism Arena extravaganza. I'm going to see if I can reclaim my honor in some vague way.
Yes.
Doesn't sound very likely to me.
Probably not. And Rory, are you still planning on doing a Prisma solo stream?
It may have to be over the weekend because the days have filled up very quickly for me this week.
Cool.
So
No worries. Well, folks can find out when / if that's going to happen by heading to We Are Hub Games across all of social media, whether that's Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, the whole 9 yards. And yeah, so yeah, back on Friday, and we're back again next Wednesday for another Hub Games Hangout. Chaps, once again, thank you.
Hang on. We got to bring this up quickly. Just
well done, Ian.
Yes, yeah, well done. But Ian, I would actually love to get you for a chat sometime.
Oh God, yeah, that'd be amazing. Like Ian's
design.
Beautiful art would be lovely to talk about, because then I could just have copies of like the gallerist behind me and just like, look at this, it's so pretty.
I am actually going to give a quick shout out for Senate, which my copy of issue 3 arrived today.
Oh, sweet. Which I'm in.
Yes, they feature Adventure Mart and Holding On in one of the articles.
Yeah, it's a great magazine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Grant. All right, so this, folks, is where we will say goodbye. So yeah, we will wave. The end screen will come up, and we'll see you next week. We love you very much. Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.